Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our new Brown Bag episode. This event is brought to you by the blockchain professionals community. We are kind of think space of blockchain engineers, of blockchain enthusiasts, and everyone who is interested in the early adoption of this technology. And we host such events every Tuesday. And today we've got our guest from Fractal ID, Luis. Hi, Luis. How are you?
Hi, Alik. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you for being with us today. And our today's topic is exploring the idOS and making compliant decentralized identity a reality. We already have hosted a couple of topics dedicated to decentralized identity, and I think this today's presentation would be a great continuation of everything we discussed earlier in our community. So without further ado, I will bring your presentation to the stage, and I'd like to ask our audience to leave your questions in the live chat, and at the end of today's session, we will go through the questions from the live chat. Okay, then, Luis, good luck to you. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alik. First of all, thanks for having me here. Thanks for having me in this event from blockchain professionals. As Alik mentioned, I want to talk today about decentralized identity, and I'm very happy to, first of all, give just a short introduction about what is this thing of decentralized identity. I know you had other sessions, but it's maybe good to go back to the basics. Like, why is everyone talking about this? Why is it very important? Why is it something that's needed on the internet? So I'm talking beyond Web3 even. So that's something that I would like to go through, and then I would also like to explain what is the idOS and why we think that building an identity layer for the internet and for Web3, it's something that's very important. Just as a quick introduction to myself, my name is Lluis. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Fractal ID, and I'm also part of the idOS, the Identity operating system. Let me get into the presentation. That should work now. Awesome. So just a couple of things about Fractal ID. We have been around since 2017, so we have been very long in the Web3 space. We built both decentralized identity infrastructure and also solution for blockchain ecosystems and dApps. Just to be more specific, what it means is that we have our own onboarding journey, which means we can onboard people into the internet to have a digital identity. And then we also have infrastructure that allows for dApps and for blockchains to be able to offer a service where you can identify yourself, but with a certain degree of decentralization. In all these years, we have worked with more than 250 projects. We have verified more than 1 million users to this point, and we're working with some of the main blockchain ecosystems in the space. Just to be more specific, so what do we do at Fractal ID? And for this, I would like to explain a little bit more of a journey. So on the top, you have users. They basically interact with projects and applications that are in certain ecosystems. So the first thing that we do is that we onboard those users. So we have our own onboarding journey. We offer different levels of verification. It could be just proof of personhood, so proving that you're a human being, or it can be KYC, or even additional elements like making sure that your funds come from a good source, etc., etc. We offer this to blockchain ecosystems, and then they basically bring this to their dApps. So with our solution, we have the onboarding, but the interesting thing here is that we also have reusability. So once a user has verified themselves once to a certain level of verification, which could be KYC, for instance, they don't need to KYC every time that they deal or that they work with a new application. They can just reuse all that data, so they don't need to go through the whole tedious process of doing that. And at the same time, we offer different ways with different degrees of decentralization on how dApps can work with that. The interesting thing about this system as well is that even though we focus on Web3 and we only have Web3 clients, it's a fully interoperable system. So it works across the blockchain ecosystems that we are working with. And finally, as I mentioned before, we also develop the infrastructure for those ecosystems to be able to provide solutions for their dApps and their users. And this is something that we do under Fractal ID, but more specifically as well, in the last months, we do through the idOS that I will explain a little bit more. in a moment. So before we get into the details, what is decentralized identity? So what is this thing that everyone is talking about and everyone is building? I usually like to define identity in a very specific sentence, very simple, which is what makes a human unique. So what makes us unique, that is our identity. And that is, well, us, it's our biometrics maybe, but it's also all the attributes that we have and that we want to share with people to the external world. So what makes us unique? To explain a little bit, where does this whole complexity of decentralized identity and digital identity comes from, I would like to go a little bit through what I call 3 phases of identity across 3, I don't want to say types, but 3 approaches to identity. So first of all, the regular physical one. So imagine that you go to the airport and someone checks your documents. The digital one, so the one that you basically do through the internet. And finally, decentralized identity, which at the end of the day, it's digital identity, but with a degree of decentralization. These 3 phases that I want to talk about are issuance, storage, and access management of identity. Issuance, it's, of course, just basically creating the documents that help someone identify themselves. Storage is where do those documents live. And finally, access management is how do you share those documents and what allow you to do. So physical identity, let's start by this one. Let's have a specific example, but imagine that you need a passport or you need a driver's license. That's something that is issued to you by your government. Or another example could be that you are have a degree certificate from university. So that would be like a company or a university in this specific case that issues that. So as a party to a human. In terms of a storage, in the real world, you store those. So you might have a wallet and you might put that document in your wallet and then you can put this in your bag, but you have it. You have your document. And when it comes to access management, in most cases, you are there. So if you go to the, you try to pass security on an airport, there's going to be someone that looks at you, you hand in a document, they look at the document, they verify physically that this document is right and it is an actual issued passport by your government. Then they look at you and they look at the picture in that document and they verify that you are the person that owns that document. And then they look into their system, to their software to understand based on where are you from and what have you done in the past, whether you can pass or not the through security. And all this happens live. It happens at the same moment. And it's a system that even though now it seems quite basic, the whole creating an international passport system took more than 25 years in the first half of the 20th century. So that was also something that took some time that now we maybe take for granted, but that's how it was for many years. Then at some point, the internet comes up. This was, well, I mean, everyone knows where the company came up, but late 90s. And then we have this thing that we call digital identity. So we have now the need of a human to identify themselves in the digital world. What's the complexity is that the humans are not there. The documents are physically not there. And then there's a lot of use cases, like, for instance, opening a bank account that are not possible anymore. But in this setup, then there's some companies, call them identity verification providers, that offer the service to verify that someone is who they are. And then they offer as well the service to tell others that that person is who they say they are going through them. So the system is basically you will have a company that issues some sort of identification for a human. They would store that data into their servers. And then anyone that wants to, again, verify who's that human will talk to that company and will go into those servers of that company and they will be verified in this way. And now think of basic information like what you could have in social media with Meta or Twitter, but also it could be any other information like your KYC actually going through one of the regular providers. The complexity about this is that it's not only one company and that knows and has the data of everyone, and it's also not only one company that needs to consume that data. It's actually a little bit more complex. So at the end of the day, you have a lot of companies issuing credentials or issuing ways to verify someone. a lot of different methods for storage, but that are centralized and don't speak to each other. And then you have a bunch of other companies or other human beings that need to access this data, but also they have to go to many different places. So this is quite complex, and that's something that it has not worked in the internet for a bunch of years. What doesn't work as well is the fact that you have companies, in this case, that they manage the data of people. You cannot tell what are they doing with this data. You cannot tell who they are sharing with. And I'm sure that everyone has heard about Cambridge Analytica and what happened with Facebook, etc., etc. So that's a problem. But at the same time, it's also really not great for business. This limits a lot the ability for doing business that require to verify who's in front of you. So at some point in 2016, some people come with the concept of decentralized identity. This is something that works through cryptography and through blockchain technology, where all of a sudden you can have, again, going back to the basics, going back to how it is in the physical world, you can own your own data. You can own your own documents. You can share, and you can choose who to share them with. And in this situation, you still have a lot of issuers. You still have a lot of people that can verify your identity. It can be different companies. You can self-issue some things, like nobody's going to question if you're a vegetarian or you're not, if you want to say that about yourself. And if there's a company that wants to do something or verify that you're a vegetarian, they will likely trust you if you say, I am a vegetarian. But not everyone will trust if you say to yourself that you are a citizen of a certain country or that you are above 18. So for this reason, you still need verification providers. You still need a bunch of companies that do these services of issuing those different elements and attributes into one identity. When it comes to storage, the whole idea of the centralized identity is that the user manages that. It's either on the devices of the user, your phone, your laptop, or it's in some sort of decentralized storage. And finally, when it comes, again, to access management, you have different ways to make that work, but all of them are ways where the user is at the center, which means the user decides who to share the data with. That's just an explanation of what is the centralized identity and why it's important, and this whole point, and why it's a very big topic, and what are the complexities behind it. And it's what I wanted to just explain a little bit before I get into details of what comes next, so everyone is on the same page. A couple of keywords, that maybe you have heard about, but DID, the centralized identifiers, DID document, verifiable credentials. I'm not going to go in detail about this. And if you want to look at more details, you can check the W3C website in this QR code. But basically, a decentralized identifier is nothing else other than a globally unique URL that points to a DID document. A DID document is something that represents a ways in which a unique human being can be, or a unique person, or it doesn't need to be a person, but in most cases it's a person, can be identified, how can be authenticated, and what are additional attributes about this. And on top of that, then you have verifiable credential, which are these attributes that are linked to a DID document. So with this setup on the internet is how we can have decentralized identity. But okay, that's great. Now people can basically manage their data, but what are real advantages of decentralized identity? And the first one is this point that, yes, as a user, now you can own your data, you can decide who has access to it. In my opinion, this is a reason enough to have the centralized identity and to know where your data is at all times. But there's also a lot of other advantages that are very relevant for business. One of them, and probably the biggest one, is reusability and interoperability. So because of KYC and because of this process of verification, there's very high customer acquisition costs in many industries, like fintech, for instance. Users hate to verify themselves. You don't want to go through any kind of onboarding process. That's something that people don't like. And in general, like user experience to join new businesses or to move away from your current ones, it's really not good. So that's something that with the centralized identity, as the user now owns the data, they can decide who they share it with. And it doesn't need to be a company sharing it with another company. It can be you deciding who you're connected with. That's one of the big advantages. Another one is that you actually have higher security. So if there are no centralized databases that include a lot of data from a lot of users, then there's much less risk of someone just getting data from these centralized databases and selling it later on, or taking advantage of that, or doing anything. Another element is compliance for regulated use cases. The fact that identity in a decentralized way is user managed, it limits a lot the exposure of companies for GDPR or for financial regulation rules. So that's something that in general helps businesses to manage their users and their data. And finally, there's also limited data loss risk or limited platform risk, on the sense that if one of the companies disappears, so let's say if the issuer of the identity disappears, nothing happens to that. So you are not going to lose from one day to another your whole user base because a company disappeared. The fact that it's in a decentralized way will make sure that still users can verify themselves and that they can still connect their identities even if one company disappears. So that is a little bit just an explanation of decentralized identity and what's important, but I wanted to also be a little more specific and explain why do we need an identity layer, and also what do I mean by an identity layer. I think that it's important to understand that there are many companies working on decentralized identity, and that decentralized identity is many things. Decentralized identity could be social media profiles, but they are also proof of personhood. And I'm sure you have heard very recently about companies like, for instance, WorldCoin. It is KYC. It is avatars. It is the infrastructure that is needed for managing it. It is DNS domains. It is everything that is needed as well to access that data and to manage the authorization. So there are many companies working in the space, and it's probably one of the main areas where blockchain found the use case since the beginning, and there has been a lot of development for this. But this whole map and this whole landscape of companies, it actually feels a little bit like this. So this is Europe in the 15th century, where you have a lot of states. Each one of them has their own system to identify their citizens, and if you move basically a few kilometers away from your house, you cannot do business there because there's no treaties, there's not a system that works for everyone, and there's no interoperability. So you actually don't have a way where all those different applications that are working in decentralized identity at different levels can get together, and they can create a landscape of digital decentralized identity applications that are used for different businesses. Identity is needed for Web3. And for the internet to really reach into everyone. We see also very clear cases where we definitely can understand that identifying that what you have in front of you, it's a human, it's important. We see a lot of bots in the identity space. We see AIs getting also very good at posing as humans to the point that it's very hard to tell them apart. We see also a lot of hype about DeFi, but actually DeFi, if it is going to get into real world use cases, it needs compliance because the financial system needs compliance, which means that the only way that DeFi gets mainstream is through actually going through identity and going through verification of humans and their funds and their transactions. The last thing is that in general, there's a lot of scrutiny coming to Web3 and a lot of questions on what is regulated and what is not. So probably there's going to be an increase of that. And when that happens, we better make sure that we have a good user experience and that people are not losing their identities, but that they can manage them in a way that is efficient, that works, but at the same time, it works for all the regulations. The reality today is that we don't have this decentralized identity system. We don't have cross-chain interoperability. We have limited data availability on the sense that we don't have a system where users can manage their data fully, but at the same time, it works with compliance and regulations. And also there's no enough systems that work for the real world use cases that we have today. And just to explain a little bit, how did we get into this situation? Every time that a company, and this could be a blockchain ecosystem, but it could be any company in general, needs to make the decision that they want to build some layer of decentralized identity, they basically have two options. The first one is to build something that is specific for the company or for the blockchain. Another one is to connect to one of the existing blockchain systems that are specifically focused on identity. For many reasons, and I'm sure that our audience knows this, interoperability is not yet a full reality in the blockchain space. We have bridges, we have rollups, but it's not something that works seamlessly yet. So both of these solutions are a little bit tricky. When you go into the storage, so you need to make a decision about where do you store this data and in the system. You have different options, but basically one of them is you put it in an identity wallet and you have the user be the ones that manage that, or you put it on chain in some way, like could be an NFT. But in these cases, you need to watch out with also the privacy of the user and making sure that you don't share any public information there. And finally, when it actually comes about the data, so what's the actual data that is being here, what to use to identify humans, there's also many different ways how that can be represented, whether it's the actual data or verifiable credentials or NFTs, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, as every company needs to go through this process, you end up with a bunch of data systems that they don't talk to each other. And that basically is what gives us the picture that I showed at the beginning. A lot of solutions, many of them very good, but that they don't talk to each other. No cross-chain interoperability, limited data availability, and no compliant data handling. What is the idOS? And why the idOS is important for this is because it actually acts like the middle layer that makes the whole identity space work and work in a decentralized way. If you take the identity value chain, the digital identity value chain, you basically have 4 different steps. The first one is the onboarding of that data. So that would be like you're a user, you want to prove that you're a human being. So you talk to some sort of identity verifier. And this could be either for compliance, KYC, or it could be simply proof of personhood. And you tell them, hey, please verify that I'm a human being and issue a proof of that. The second layer is storage. So how is going to be this proof or this credential going to be stored? The third one is access management. So who is this credential going to be shared with? How can we manage who has access to that? How can you know who has access to that data? And finally, there is a bunch of identity-based services that are on top of that, like profiles or anything around analytics or marketing. What is the role of the idOS on this? So the idOS, in terms of onboarding, supports multiple verified credential standards and data. It supports any issuer. So at the beginning is going to be Fractal ID, but anyone can use the system. It's a permissionless system that anyone can use. It works as a decentralized storage data layer that is chain agnostic, that has the data being always available, and therefore it's compliant with the main financial regulations. And then it allows the users as well to manage the data on their own. This makes this a solution that for data storage and access management is better than the main 3 options that we see today, like other decentralized storage, identity wallets, or soul-bound tokens, NFTs. The last thing is that as it is a permissionless layer that is composable, it also acts as a backend where other applications, and this could be anything around profiles or marketing services mainly, can build on top to provide their solutions. An important point to mention here as well is that the idOS has its own, it's a protocol. It has its own way to monetize. So actually will allow issuers to provide access to credentials through using the system, letting users manage that, but also making sure that this is a sustainable business model for the protocol, but also for the issuers that use that or any of the applications that build on top. So again, chain agnostic, data always available, compliant. That means composable across blockchain ecosystems, across applications and wallets, and across multiple identity standards. It is not a solution that you need to connect to. It's something that you can integrate into any application. It is an easy implementation. I'm going to get in a second on the details of that. But then wherever you are, users can just interact with their wallet. And this is the idOS. This is what we have been building now for several months and what we already introduced, but it's becoming fully live very soon. Actually, in 3 weeks, it's going to be coming fully live first on Near. We have built this together with several partners. Fractal ID is bringing the identity infrastructure. Quill is building the decentralized storage relational database. And then we have 3 major ecosystems, which are Near, Gnosis, and Aleph Zero. more specifically, what's the idOS? So if we talk about components, it is a decentralized storage network of nodes. So think of any decentralized storage network like storage or Filecoin or Airwave, but in this case, one that is specifically developed for identity data management, that has constant data availability, that takes a big point into encryption and privacy, that makes sure that works with our identity solutions. And second, an access management protocol, which is a chain agnostic access control smart contracts, which enables this compliant data handling, and at the same time to have a verified user pool that lives across different blockchain ecosystems. How does it feel? So what is the idOS journey? So this, what that you can see right now, this is the journey through near.org that is going to come live very soon. But in this case, you have a profile. This is your profile in near.org. So it could be your name.near, for instance. And in here, you have a section that is identity and data privacy. This is something that can be built, or we also have our own dashboard. But in this case, Near decided that they wanted to build it directly in the main part of their profile. And here you can see what credentials you have. In this case, you can add a credential for proof of personhood or for KYC. Whenever you click that, you're going to be sent to an issuer. In this case, it's a Fractal ID. You could go through a whole verification process, depending on what you're going for. And then a credential would be issued and stored into the idOS. So for the idOS, you actually create your own password. You encrypt any data that is added into the idOS using that password, which means that you, even though it's in the decentralized nodes and it has been issued by identity verification provider like Fractal, you are the only one that has access to that data and decides who is shared with and can decrypt it. After you do that, then your profile gets updated. So now you have a credential. This credential, it's a verified human credential. You can see who you're sharing it with. You can stop sharing with people. You can add additional credentials, and you have full visibility about that. You do it once, you can use it across the whole Near ecosystem, and actually you can use it also across any sort of ecosystem in the internet by just using your wallet. To be a little bit more, this system also has a architecture. It's similar to what I explained. Instead of going from basically the user journey, you would have an identity verifier. You will then add the data into your profile, encrypt it. Your profile will make sure to provide access to applications as long as you let them do that. So as a user, you would go to the different applications. Then they would be able to query this decentralized storage system and just ask if that user has a credential that is needed here for verification, and then ask the user if they want to share it. So basically everything works in a seamless way. You are walking or going around the internet with your profile, your idOS profile, even though you don't know it, it's just there on a seamless way, but you know who the data is always shared with. We also built 3 tools. These tools make sure that the idOS is not only a theoretical effort, that's something that actually comes into reality. So there's an SDK for applications to integrate the idOS very easily, and that's something that's free, and it's going to come live very soon. Then there's a dashboard where users can see their data, who is it shared with. And for instance, in the case of Near, they also built their own dashboard, apart from the one that we have. And then there's a command line interface as well for developers to integrate the idOS at different levels of their application. That's great. That's a system that works for identity, or at least that's what I think. But what are the use cases for this? Why is it actually very exciting? And why are all these major ecosystems deciding to work with us and build part of this? So we wanted to make sure that we didn't build something that was just there and it wouldn't have adoption. So the moment that we decided to go live with it was the moment that we actually also found 3 very strong use cases that are going to come in Q4 of this year. So all of them happening very soon. With Near, we're integrating, as you have seen as well in the Near BOS at near.org. That is built actually as one of the components that you have in the BOS, and it will be linked to an on-off-ramp solution, so allowing people to seamlessly on-off-ramp the money, which has a bunch of applications like remittances or e-commerce that are very relevant. With Gnosis, we're basically working with Gnosis Pay. This is on the self-custodial Visa cards. So you will be able to work across different applications that are implementing the system. That is Gnosis Pay for the debit card. But then you have Safe, which basically it's your bank account where everything settles. And then we're working with another company called Monerium that give you an IBAN and actually let you manage your account with the ability to make both transfers in fiat or in crypto and manage it from a single place and pay directly from your debit card. This real-world DeFi product works as well in a composable way because there's a composable identity layer behind it, which is the idea is that make sure across all these applications there's a seamless onboarding, that it's compliant with all the regulations and the financial regulations of such a use case, but at the same time the user doesn't feel the friction that it would generate. We're also working with Aleph Zero. In here, we're working for empowering zero knowledge base IDs, so allowing people to work with privacy enhanced DeFi applications, still remain anonymous, but making sure that the whole system is compliant with regulation. There's many more use cases. We usually split them across 4 different areas. So real world DeFi, these automatic on-off ramps, the social, and then additional analytics and user privacy, where this is very important. Just put a couple of numbers here of the size of these industries today. If we actually manage to enable them and bring them to Web3 with all the benefits that that has, with all the composability elements, and if we add this missing layer today, which is the identity layer. We introduced the idOS in September. We are launching in November the MVP with Near first. That's going to happen very soon, in 3 weeks from now. We're going to also have this first use case, but there's also a bunch of dApps that are waiting for this to come live and several users as well. We're going to focus then on integrating with everyone else for the rest of the year. Beginning of next year, everything is about growth, more applications, more users, improving the product, getting more people to build together with us. And we're also considering to launch in Q4. The idOS is open source. It's very important that everyone leverage this as a Web3 ecosystem, which is what it is, which means that we are very transparent about the challenges that we see ahead. It's very hard to build what we're building, but we have a very clear idea, and we have brilliant people working from different companies on this. We're looking for more leading blockchain ecosystems to integrate and make this system available to everyone in Web3. We're looking for building partners that can build key functionalities of the idOS beyond the identity and relational database element that we have now. We are actively looking for real-world DeFi use cases. So anything that touches the real world and that makes DeFi go to the next step, and we can enable through Identity. And finally, at some point in the next months, very soon, we're also going to be looking for value-add investors that help us make the idOS a reality. In terms of tech and product, we are convinced that the solution that we have built is very robust and it works well, but you can always improve it. We have also worked a lot on regulatory and compliance to ensure that this is a solution that works for the use cases that need it today. We're working with these ecosystems into growth and user adoption, but that's something that's critical for the whole system to work, is that we bring it to where people are today. And finally, we're also going to be working on the token economy and the business model. As I mentioned before, we have a plan for having payment rails built into the system. So changing how identity gets monetized, and finally finding a business model that works both for the data consumers, which are the applications or the blockchains, but also for the issuers of identity. And everyone is well incentivized for the system to work. And that's it. That's what I wanted to present today. You can see more details about what we're building on the Gitbook. You can also check our website. You're going to hear very soon about more updates. And if you think that you could build with us and that you could build parts of the idOS, or you would like to integrate the idOS when it comes live very soon, please let us know. I'm happy to work together with you. Thank you very much. And I will be happy now to answer your questions.
Okay, Lewis, thank you so much for making this topic so understandable, I would say, and for the news about your uh, soon. I remember you told that you are going to launch soon, and since Fractal ID is a pretty known name, I hope we'll hear about that soon later. And let me check the live chat. One moment, please. I see the first question from my colleague Alexandra Pitkevich. She says, how many identities do you manage in your network today?
How many identities? So I understand the question identities means how many users we have verified. So to this day, we have verified more than 1 million users. This is different degrees of identity verification, right? For some, we simply have verified that they have an email address. That's for a few of them. For some, we have a proof of personhood. So we prove that they are a unique human being into our system. That's for most people. For some, we have verified additional elements. So we have verified a full KYC profile. We have verified the funds or AML status. We have linked wallets to it. So we have in total more than 1 million users that we have verified.
Okay, and another question comes from Konstantin. How many nodes are in the idOS protocol, and how do you incentivize them to participate?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the idOS um, as a decentralized storage network at the current state, and it's going to be still like this for the next month, it is permissioned. It's like, call it if you want a federation, but we have a bunch of players that decided together to become the host of the data. At some point, if we launch a token and when we launch a token, this becomes a decentralized network. So in order to become a node, you need to do a certain things that allow you to do that. So there's limited slots for nodes, and then depending on the system that we built, but it's likely going to be based on delegated proof of stake, you can be one of those node operators or not. Today, in the permission phase, the node operators are going to be the partners that you saw in that slide. So this is the ones that will be part of the system, the ones that we have built it together. We make sure that there's enough decentralization. We have different interests. We have different user bases. That's how it's going to work. Whenever that changes, why would you become a node operator? So, I mean, first of all, could be because you are leveraging the idOS for big parts of your product or solution. So you want to make sure that you have a way to protect the whole system. But second, as I mentioned before, the idOS will have a way to generate revenue on its own. And I'm not talking about token revenue, I'm talking about actual revenue, so cash. As a node operator, you are providing a service to the system. So part of the fees that get collected should be split among the ones that actually provide value to the system. So that's how an incentive model will work.
Okay, and the next question, also from Sasha Pitkevich, she asks, what do you expect from developers? What skills do they need to succeed?
What skills do they need to succeed in this system? I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it much easier for everyone to keep building applications that leverage identity, but by abstracting the whole complexity of the storage, the compliance aspect, the access management aspect that it has. So we are building tools that allow people to leverage that, but we expect everyone, or we expect people to also build tools on top of it. Now that we have extracted this level that adds a lot of complexity into how you store the data, how do you share data, we actually hope that developers will also work into building applications or protocols on top of this one that allow identity to do more things, like better analytics into Web3, actually transferable profiles, for instance. So we would like just more use cases that are needed for today and actually bring Web3 to mainstream applications.
Okay, and a couple of questions from me. So, uh, as we as we may have noticed that the technology itself is much more advanced than people's ability to agree on adopting this technology itself. And so what do you think is the main problem of massive adoption of decentralized identity nowadays?
I think that the problem is what I mentioned before, which is that you need to build a system that is vertically integrated. So it does everything. It works from the onboarding until the access management. And then if you actually want to build applications on top, that it also works in this way. And the reason is because the systems today are not interoperable. So either you build the whole thing or it will not work. It will miss critical parts. Um, the reason it didn't work is because of that, because you are asking people that are in different places of the internet to all adopt a system that needs to be very specific with its own standards, with their own schemas, with its own ways of working. And then there's like 15 of these universal systems, which means that there's none that is universal. So that didn't work. And there was a lot of money that was invested in this, a lot of time. But I think we were building it on the wrong way, rather than building the primitives and the basics for actually anyone then to build on top. So I do think that the idOS, it's what digital identity need to actually become decentralized, and something that allows then everyone to leverage the perks that it has beyond just user empowerment and managing your own data, all the solutions that it offers for better UX, more security, easier onboarding of users, lower cost for applications. So anything that's needed for identity to succeed on the internet.
Okay, thank you so much. And how does your product plan to acquire new developers and new users of your platform?
Mhm. Well, so the idOS, as I mentioned before, we will fundraise soon. Now the idOS has been built through the partners, so Fractal ID, Quill, Near, etc., that are working on developing the system. That's something that to some extent will change. So I guess when we fundraise, we will hire people to help us develop this faster. But what's very important is the whole composable part of the system, in which we're building in the full Web3 way. Everything is open source. It's composable. Anyone can build on top. So we hope that everyone leverage the system without us having to build most of it. Actually, just acting as a working as a backend, and then allowing anyone to adapt it to whatever fits their needs.
Okay, I think that was the last question. As for now, let me check it once again in our streaming sources. And just to remind everyone that we already have had a couple of other decentralized identity sessions in our community. Please visit our website to find the recordings of our previous sessions. By the way, last year we had a session dedicated to decentralized identity fundamentals with our community leader, Sasha Pitkevich. So, as I see, there are no more questions. If there will be some questions after the end of this session, I will address them directly to you, Luis. Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for such a great presentation. And wish you good luck with your upcoming launch.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me today. Very happy to having here and for the opportunity to talk about the ADS. And yeah, thanks for as well the good wishes, and hope to be in contact soon. For anyone that wants to know more about the ADOS, you know well, the website idOS.network. There you can find more information. We're going to be in multiple events towards the end of the year. We're going to be in Lisbon. We're going to be in Dev Connect in Istanbul as well. So looking forward to talk to anyone that wants to come together and build with us.
Okay, then. Yeah, thank you. See you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.